Hi, my name is Thais Gibson, and I'm the creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how the anxious preoccupied experiences dating and honeymoon stages of a relationship with a fearful avoidant, and then a little bit of how that starts to shift in this dynamic going into the power struggle stage. I know also some people are really into like lighting and how videos are set up and all this stuff. So just bear with me for this week because I'm pre-batching videos from an Airbnb because we had a hurricane hit our home and nothing like super, super serious or anything, but there's no power in pretty much most of our province right now. So we had to leave so that we could work and try to do normal life. I'll be heading back soon, and there will be normal lighting and a background for future videos. So what I really wanted to dive into here is discussing like how the anxious preoccupied really feels in this relationship dynamic, because I think that sometimes the AP gets very confused in this relationship, feels very like at a loss. There tends to be sudden change that happens for anxious preoccupieds when in a relationship with a fearful avoidant. And I think that a lot of anxious preoccupied individuals are trying to like put their finger on why. Why did this happen? What's gone on? Why is there such a sudden change in my partner? What is this all about? And so I want to talk about, some of the things to pay attention to, some of what is going on, to hopefully help you make sense of all of this. And when the relationship between an FA and AP starts, the anxious preoccupied person often feels like they've met their person. Like they feel like this person makes them feel seen and heard and connected, because we know fearful avoidance can be very, very present. And this is something that anxious preoccupied individuals are very attracted to and often like deeply seeking. And so they feel seen and understood and connected to. They love the depth of connection. Fearful avoidants often ask deep and quite meaningful questions. And it makes the AP feel like, oh my gosh, somebody cares. And on the flip side, there's a lot of like fireworks that go off. Both parties have a tendency to be codependent in the way that they interact. However, the fearful avoidant can really push into the counter-dependent space as well very easily. But we'll talk about when that happens. So anxious preoccupieds will often feel this like, wow, like this person's really showing up for me. But because there will be moments of avoidance of the fearful avoidant, the AP from an early time will feel like they have to kind of earn the approval of their fearful avoidant partner, and they'll work hard to be good enough, right? Not that they're not good enough, but that they have the core wound that often puts them into this perceptual space in the way that they interact in relationships where they believe they're not good enough. So they think that they have to go like earn the approval of their partnerships. And then eventually they'll start to really fear the abandonment of this connection. Now, because things start off so strongly and both parties feel really seen and heard and connected, and things usually in this relationship dynamic like move very fast, very suddenly, APs have this expectation of like, oh, well, this will always be the pace that this relationship moves. And so when there's these small rejections that start happening, it can cause the anxious preoccupied to kind of go into like despair a little bit and a lot of distress. And what's essentially happening from the fearful avoidance side that you should know, if you are the AP, is that what's going on is that the fearful avoidant starts getting afraid of losing themselves to a relationship. They get afraid. They have a lot of stored subconscious associations for what it means to be codependent. And usually there's a lot of pain and suffering. And usually it didn't really end well. And so when the fearful avoidant starts feeling themselves slipping into too much codependency, often like all of a sudden, it's not really all of a sudden, but it seems all of a sudden, the fearful avoidant will sort of have this like buildup of fear going on in the background, and that fear will reach like a precipice, like a tipping point, and that will cause them suddenly at that precipice to want to pull away and protect the relationship to themselves and protect their independence, protect their autonomy. And so for the person on the receiving end of this, being the AP, it feels like there's this sudden massive shift. And to kind of compound that, like this is one of the anxious preoccupied's biggest fears. One of their biggest fears in relationships is that their fearful avoidant partner, this person they feel so connected to, will abandon them. And one of their biggest fears for all relationships is that of abandonment. And so it seems to like really magnify this huge fear. And it's almost like, when you think of something being taken away that you didn't think was a sure thing or that you didn't have at your fingertips, it's like, oh, that thing was taken away. I wasn't really banking on it coming through anyways. But when there's this depth of something that you really care about and are really attached to, and then it's taken away, it has a different impact, right? And this is what happens for the AP, is that there's this depth of connection that's happening so fast and allows the AP to really get invested in. And so when that's taken away, it feels like it's like really ripped away. And this can be really challenging for the AP individual. And these things are solvable problems, but there's certain communication that has to happen. And also, as a pre-qualifier for these problems to be solvable, both parties have to be willing to work on these problems, right? Like if this has already happened and you're thinking of like reconciliation, well, then the other person has to jump on board too. It has to be fair to both parties is what I'm trying to say. So anyways, so sometimes you'll see the fearful avoidant pull away, and pulling away doesn't always mean the fearful avoidant just exits the relationship, but usually takes a big step back. And that's very alarming for the AP. And the hot cold dynamic and that flip flopping can be, it really like torments their deep inner fears. And a lot of those stories will come up like, oh, am I not good enough? Did I do something wrong? Did I hurt the person? Was it my fault? Was I not doing enough? I'm not worthy of somebody sticking around. Like a lot of these fears will start to really rotate around in the anxious preoccupied's mind. And the way that the AP is used to coping with these fears is to overcompensate, to give more, to be more, to try harder, to try to spend more time together. And it's funny because it pushes on like the root cause of why the fearful avoidance pulling away, which is that they fear that they're losing their independence and their own identity. And they start fearing that. And so when the AP comes closer, it pushes the FA away further, and it becomes this like vicious cycle very easily. By the way, I have a whole in-depth course. Like I'm just taking you through like a quick 5-10 minute video, because that's what time here allows for. But I have like a 3-hour course that goes through, it's in 2 parts. It goes through every single part of this relationship, everything you can do, how to communicate to each person in this relationship. And you can check it out for free using the link in the description box below. And you can also go through all of our different courses. It's a 7-day free access to everything. And you can check out all the courses. I do 4 live webinars every week. You can join in, ask me questions about literally whatever you want. And then also we've got daily social and community events that you can check out as well. And that's all using the link down below. So anyways, the AP will often feel like this person who's kind of like the center of their universe is like pulled away, and they'll try to like win them back. And the funny thing is that's like the exact thing you don't want to be doing, because the AP, when they keep pushing towards the FA, keep polarizing the FA into their DA side. And what you really want to do is, and I know it's really hard, and there's ways of doing this, right? There's strategies to like question your stories, practice meeting your own needs, do trade integration work. Like there's things you can do to really make it an easier process at the subconscious level, which is where all this like panic is coming from for anxious preoccupied individuals. But what you want to be able to do is self-soothe using specific strategies that will then allow you, and there's strategies in that course, you can go in depth, that will then allow you to be okay with giving the FA space as they start to pull away. And that's ultimately what allows them to see like, oh, I can still have this ability to pull back and have my independence, and my AP partner has independence as well, and they're okay. And then that usually like boomerangs into the FA's more anxious side, where they then want to reach out and reconnect with the partner before like threatening to end the relationship. So you'll see this like pulling back. When that pulling back happens, that's where you sit still. And that's where you have to work on like really honing in on it and honoring that relationship to yourself, because in doing that, not only are you actually taking steps to become more securely attached and have a greater sense of self-identity, but you're also preventing that FA dynamic from spiraling out of control. And then that FA turns more anxious in that anxious side and wants to come and get closer. So this is like a big part of what's important. This also has to be communicated about. It doesn't just mean like, oh, you just do all the work as the AP. Like you have to set boundaries with the FA and say what's okay for you and not okay for you. And, follow up those boundaries with consequences if that person's not showing up to do their part in the relationship. But there's so many things that have just like honed in on at these specific sort of like thresholds of the relationship, if they're just changed in terms of the patterning, if the AP just learned to meet their own needs, self-soothe a little bit better when the FA pulls away, it wouldn't spiral out of control, right? And there's many different variations of this in this relationship dynamic, but that's one of the most important ones to pay attention to early on. And it's also really important that each person has boundaries, learns to communicate their feelings, learns to communicate their needs, and not like their feelings about each other, but like their feelings of what's okay for them and not. And when they feel upset by something, to address it in a healthy way, and say, hey, like this isn't cool when this happens, and can we try doing this instead? And to really show up and care for your own, like not like sovereignty, but your own like person, right? Like your own, hey, you're an AP and there's certain needs that you're going to have that are moving towards connection and relationships, but like you also have certain needs as a person as well that you can work on meeting yourself, like hopefully a mission and vision for your life and goals that you have and things you want to do in the different areas. And the less that that's there for you, the less balance you have as an AP across the 7 areas, the more naturally you're going to try to get fulfillment from one zone of your life, being your relationships. And the more it's going to feel so impactful if somebody pulls away, because it's going to feel like this like not soul focus, but this huge focus of your life is being pulled away. So sometimes too, if you notice yourself really over responding to little incongruencies, little shifts or change in the relationship patterns, that's also really good feedback that like, hey, you want to make sure you have a nice, healthy, defined sense of self outside of just the relationships in your life, so that when there are moments of rockiness, because all relationships will have them in the power struggle stage, you still feel rooted in your sense of self. You still know that you're going to be okay. You're still capable of knowing and meeting your own needs. You still have healthy balance with friendships and family relationships and workplace relationships. And you've got a career and a healthy relationship to money and a plan. And you've got these things that like make you have a strong sense of inner self, which will make you feel less really like your world is turned upside down when somebody pulls away externally. So anyways, that's all in some of the course. And there's also a whole bunch of other stuff you can check out, like strengthening self-identity. If you find yourself struggling there, we have a whole course for that, like really building up your sense of self in a healthy way, not like an egoic way. And then also a course about just reprogramming anxious, preoccupied attachment style as a whole. So you can check those all out for free using that link below. I hope this makes sense and gives you some insight. And thank you for watching. Thanks for being here and hanging out. Please like, share, and subscribe if you got some value from this video, and I will see you in tomorrow's video.